This is my audience, and in their hands is the PowerPoint they'll be using to follow along. Good evening. My name is Mark Mendoza, and I'm going to be giving you a persuasive speech on entomophagy, the practice of eating insects, especially by people. I want us to come away with this, with realizing that we need to start looking at insects as a viable food source in the future for a growing population. Now, in no way am I saying that we should completely turn to insects or completely disregard meats. I'm saying that we should look to it as a source of food that we can incorporate with our diets now. The reason being is that by 2050, the Earth is predicted to have 9 billion people inhabiting it. And one of the major issues arising is how to feed that population. So a couple things we'll go over is the environment influences, some health benefits with eating insects, and how to get past Western taboo of eating insects and our outlook on it. So, 70% of all agricultural land is used for livestock feeding. 30% is used for humans. Even more interesting, the U.S. Soil Conservation Service estimates that half of the U.S. arable land is eroded. By 2020, 35 countries will be labeled as scarce water. And why is that important? Because livestock use dwindling fresh water supplies and cause destruction to forest, grasslands, all while eroding soil. The Livestock Environment and Development estimates that 18% of all greenhouse emissions are caused by livestock. Now let's compare that to our insect counterparts. Breeding systems called mini livestocks are more efficient. For example, 150 grams of steak uses 3,290 liters of fresh water. Now we compare that to 150 grams of grasshoppers that use 1,000 times less the amount of water. Insects use less feed than livestock and don't require agricultural lands to breed. They also reproduce at a faster rate. Now, another thing that they're good for is control of fecal waste. A cow is only 40% edible. Poultry and fish, only 55% of it is edible. Now the insect, 80% of an insect is edible. We can eat insects and we control fecal waste. Now, let's compare the health benefits. To name a couple, caterpillars contain 28 grams of protein per 100 grams. They're full of iron and vitamin B and only contain 370 calories. Compare that to fish, which don't contain as much iron or vitamin B. 100 grams of crickets contain 121 calories, while 12.9 grams of protein and only 5.5 grams of fat. 100 grams of beef is 288 calories, 23.5 grams of protein, but 21 grams of fat. The comparisons continue. Insects carry important sources of vital nutrients, calories, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, and fibers. And unlike the pig or pork, they're dissimilar to humans, so the risk of pathogens is almost non-existent. And the comparison when it comes to food-wise, like I just did with grams and fat, is continuous. There's many studies on that. Western taboo. So now how do we get past that outlook that insects are yucky and gross and we shouldn't eat them? Well, 2 billion people around the world are already practicing this, are already consuming insects. There are 1,900 species all across the world that are edible. You can't get infected by disease by eating an insect. It has to enter your bloodstream. So where do we get this phobia of the insect? Well, wasps, bees, scorpions, and spiders all produce this phobia because of the stings and bites. But if you look at prawns, crabs, lobsters, they're all arthropods, which are cousins to crickets, lotus, and scorpions. But we don't take a second thought to think about that. Changing the names of edible insects is another alternative. The same way we do with pigs when we call them pork and bacon. We could do the same thing for edible insects in order to break that, type of mindset of eating insects. So I challenge you to look up chefs like Monica Martinez, David George Gordon, Sal Pablo, who are all world-renowned chefs that are incorporating insects into their meals. There's videos on any of their websites showing people eating insects for the first time and surprisingly enjoying the food. So, going over one more time, turning to insects as a form of food source and not as sole purpose of eating them and only them, but using them to incorporate to reduce the strain on our environment, and knowing that we're not risking any of our health or giving up any nutrition while we're eating them, we're actually gaining some good amount, and breaking that Western taboo so that we can see that it is a viable food option. At the end of your PowerPoint, there is a TED Talk video, 18 minutes of your time. If you'd care to look it over, I'd really appreciate it. It's a really good video that goes into greater detail of what I just explained. I'd like to thank you for helping me out today, and that concludes my persuasive speech.